This is going to be the deck profile for the deck I use at my OTS championship. If you haven't checked out all the rounds, there's 5 rounds, and it'll show you how the deck functions, its capabilities, and some of the cool things you can do that's not, I guess, standard, because this is a 60 card list utilizing the adventure engine, utilizing the cash engine, and of course the Azamina. Because initially, the variant that was thought out to be the best was the cash version with the Azamina cards. But I went the other way. I went with adventure because I felt that TERRORTOP was such a versatile card because of it, right? It gave you access to your engine, or it give you access to the adventure engine, which is like an Omni, right? To insulate your board on top of the board you already have, right? Which is like the standard board consists of an Omni, a quick synchro, and a pop, right? But if you add another Omni to it, it'll make your board a bit more resilient, right? So if you haven't watched the games yet, there were 5 rounds of Swiss, no top cut. I ended up going 3-1-1. I won 3. I won my first 3. I lost round 4, and then I drew in the final round, putting me in 7th place. Not bad, but so let's get straight into it. All right, so first and foremost, we have the star of the deck, basically, TERRORTOP. TERRORTOP is just an insane card. As I mentioned earlier, it gives you access to either engine, adventure, or Crystron, which is really good. And going second into a board, because you're playing cash cards as well, you can convert this into a 1-card SP. One of the issues that a lot of you were concerned about, what do you do when you open up this and cash cards? Well, going second, it's a bit easier because you can start with TERRORTOP, right? You don't have to go into your turbine line. You can just go into special, link this off for Clockwork Knight, and then go SP banish, right? And then force interaction. And if they interact or respond to the SP, you quick effect banish SP, and then you clear your board for your cash cards. But it's an insane card. And then of course you have your adventure engine. This is where it's a bit different. I'm only playing 1 RITE, and it's only because of how the deck was constructed and the process of how it ended up being 1 RITE. Because initially it was 3, but I wanted to fit 3 more non-engine, and I ended up cutting the 3rd sulfador and the 2 RITEs to fit in 2 more Veilers. And to be fair, because you would rather see 2 Enchantress than see 2 RITEs, right? Because 2 Enchantress is still possibility of Turbini line, where you can go, this searches this, places this, right? And then this can search the last Enchantress. So initially you should open up with 2, so you go special, normal, then go Turbini, then try to go get your combo that way. I didn't mind it. I didn't feel like I needed to add, multiple copies. Whether I continue to do this moving forward, I'm not too sure. But it worked fine for the day. It's just something that I was trying to make room for. It is 60 cards, so it's a bit weird saying that there's no room or I couldn't find room. But it was just in the way the deck building process happened, right? It was towards the end where I was like, what do I cut? It wasn't like I started off with this ratio, right? Because that wouldn't make sense. But I think after you understand that I was only cutting towards the end, it makes a lot more sense. And then, of course, you have your cash engine. I ended up cutting a fair bit of this as well. Only playing 3 Fenrir, 1 Unicorn, and the 1 Birth, because I wanted to make room for non-engine, right? Because this engine is good. It's cohesive in the way it can mesh together. But you still need to simplify, right? You still need to attempt to simplify and not get overwhelmed by the board that they end up making. This was the bare minimum. I guess you could have cut 1 more, right? But I felt like opening up Fenrir is quite crucial, especially with the other engine that you play with your Azamina engine. So you play the Diabell, the Triple Wanted, Deception, and of course the Hollowed. Because so initially you would think that this would be better, but I think for this line, you would rather open a Fenrir, right? Because Fenrir gets you to this, right? And then you can go into your Diabell, send the Fenrir, Deception, send the Witch, and then it opens up your line for Unicorn. So I saw value in that a bit more, so I ended up going with that. 1 Deception is fine, 1 Witch is fine. Remember, all these ratios were based on the process of when they were cut, right? Initially, they weren't like this, but towards the end, when I wanted to make room, these are the cards I felt like I can cut these. And then, of course, same thing with this. This was initially a 3 of, so was this. But towards the end, I wanted to make room, and I ended up cutting. And it seemed fine. Initially, I would think 3 and 3 is the way to go, or even 5 is the way to go. But the entire day, if you watch the gameplay, it was never a need to get access to a third copy. So even if you play a 40 card build, I think 2 and 2 is fine, right? Whether you want to maximize one or the other, I don't know. But just having 2 and 2 just seemed fine. Then, of course, you have your Smiger, probably the best normal summon of the deck. And then you have your Theisfern, you have your Turtle. This card's insane in this deck, as you saw in the gameplay, where sometimes you just send this off of your sulfador, right? And then being able to add back a 5 off of Valesque, and then banishing this and special summoning that to make an infinity or help you get into a 7, a 9. I like the Turtle, it's pretty cool. And it seems unnecessary, but in a practical sense, you'll see the value in it. And then, of course, with Tristaros, initially as well, this was at 3. But in the same case, towards the end, I wanted to cut things to fit more non-engine. And this was the way to do it. Because I wanted to play all the engines, like the cash cards, the Azamina cards, and the adventure engine. So if you don't cut non-essential cards, you're going to be stuck with a bunch of engine that can possibly break through a board, but you want to ensure that you have the consistency of drawing into non-engine and still having these options available, right? You still have these. It's not like you don't have them. It's just in a lesser quantity. Situ was fine. A few lines I did with this is pretty cool. And then, of course, you have your triple inclusion and your 1 cluster. These cards are just insane. Searches any Crystron card in graveyard, banish it. Special summon a Crystron from grave. Pretty nice. And then this one against Malice matchups, so just setting up against an SP is like, they can't banish it. It's like so nice. And then we have our non-engine, right? We have our triple tactics, of course. This card's insane. you saw in full action in the gameplay. Then you have, of course, your triple droplet. This is strictly for Dweller, because Dweller is a bit of an issue, and so is Detonator. So you need to be able to have cards like this to combat that. Go in second. And then this is where we have the non-engine. This is why I had to cut some of the ratios of the engine. So you have your triple nib, your triple ash, triple droll, triple veiler, and then of course your triple imperm, rounding it up to 60 cards, because I still wanted the versatility of the deck and having all these engines, right? Making sure that it wasn't as telegraphed, right? Because usually pure Crystron is quite telegraphed. They know exactly where to stop you. They know exactly where to interact. But when you have an obscure list like this, it keeps them guessing. So that's what you want to gain an edge, right? And because the engine is kind of huge, you want to oversaturate as much as you can with non-engine, and which means bumping the deck up all the way to 60. And they worked fine. I only bricked once, which was the Tempai game, where I opened up Tristaros and a bunch of hand traps. but other than that, it was fine. The list worked perfectly fine. And some of the cool things you can do with this deck as well is like, it's not like ideal, but when you get caught in a situation, it actually comes out. Like being able to use your cash cards and your adventure engine to go into Dragosack has come up as well. Because sometimes they imprint this preemptively, like, okay, it's fine, right? You have your bounce available, you bounce something, right? You go special this, and then you go get your guy. And then this can turn into a Dracosack as well, which is hilarious. It'll depend on whether you need to use its Omni effect or not, right? But if you need to get to engine, you be aware that you're capable of doing so. You can just overlay this for Dracosack, and then it'll give you the tokens to get into your Cherubini, which is quite cool. And it being a wind as well with TERRORTOP seems trivial, but it comes up, as you saw in one of the games, right? Because this is a wind. You can special this as well. Same thing with your unicorn. It's a wind, right? It seems very trivial, but like it actually comes up. And that allows you to go for an SP line, right? You would have gone special this. This would have gotten your birth, right? You go SP, banish, birth back, yeah? And do pretty cool things like that. But for the most part, if this is the first time you've seen this list, because I've already made a few deck profiles about this, usually the way and the reason why you kind of like defer this this variant is because of the normal summon, right? You're like, oh, but you can use Tristaros effect if you activate right. Well, yeah, you don't really use Tristaros the same way as you would in the pure build, right? This is you basically almost always are not using that effect. You're just gonna either dump this with your Cherubini and then getting access to your inclusion and then summoning it that way, right? Or if you go for the just this line with your RITE, this turns into your coral, right? And then you pop. So like typically what you want to do, and the reason why this is so good going second is because you can force so many things. So for example, like let's say you start with this, right? Go with this, you bounce, you set up your Omni, okay? You negate something, right? Whether they activated something in response to your bounce, right? This will go back into the deck. And then you go into Coral Dragon, then discards a card, ideally like a Crystron card, which would be pretty cool. You pop a card, force another interaction, and then now you have a Synchron field that you can pop with your Tristaros, and then you can chain block. You go chain 1, chain 2, Coral to draw, and that's why it's so cool. Just check out the gameplay. I showcase all this stuff. It's pretty cool. But there's some pretty cool things you can do. And there are, like, initially I was playing ROSENIX, because there are times where you kind of want to save the Draco back, or sometimes they get rid of your token. Like they'll get rid of your token and then you're like, oh, I can't use Draco back anymore. It's kind of useless. But because you have access to this guy, and this guy can send ROSENIX, and ROSENIX can banish itself to special a token. If this is equipped to a normal monster, which is a token as well, you can still bounce. So I was testing that as well, but on the day, as I was mentioning, I was cutting things just to ensure that I have enough non-engine. But I don't know. I feel like that was pretty cool. I didn't get enough testing with it to be confident enough to keep it in, but it was something I was testing because it did come up. Because sometimes you run out of things to send, right? You can only send so many things, and being able to send a turtle was like so convenient for this deck. Because a lot of the times you want to bypass a normal summon restriction, so you can like, okay, there are times where you go like send this, right, and your turtle, and then like you can banish one, add this, right, banish the turtle, special this instead of using its effect, so you won't get locked, like that. I think that plays pretty cool. And the cool thing about Vermillion as well is being able to banish your Veiler or your Ash, and then like pop it with your Staros to summon 2, then add triggered Vermillion Engrave to add back the banished HANDTRAP. Like that's cool. You see that in one of the games. Even if you haven't seen it yet, I think it's in round 5. I do that play, which is pretty cool. But whether I keep the ratios the way they are, I'm not sure. Like, I don't know. Like, I keep drawing this guy so much, though. I'm not gonna lie. I keep drawing this so much. I don't know. I'm not. Whether I keep this variant, I'm not sure. I just like the versatility that you get from all these engines, right? All the pivot points. They can't really like anticipate properly. But I kind of want to maybe streamline it and just go with just Adventure and Crystron, because that's what I initially started with, and maybe put in Title again, because Title's insane with this deck. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. And then we have our side deck, which is gonna be triple Chaos Hunter, triple Lance from Malice, Rizio, and then of course whenever you go first, because they're gonna be citing Malice against you, and sometimes Hunter, so you put those in and stop every other hand trap apart from Charmy. But I felt like this was fine. This versus Blue Eye just hit the back row, force the True Light, seemed pretty okay. And then when people citing strikes post game 1, and then you have your extra deck, which is gonna be quite different because of what we're trying to facilitate, right? So we're gonna have our 1 Koran Gandrax, the 1 Vermillion. You guys saw this guy in action a fair bit. This over Navy, because just going second, one of the issues that I pointed out when I first picked up the deck is having enough spot removal going second, or being able to force things, right? Which is what I felt the deck was lacking, and the whole reason why I ended up implementing the Adventure engine. Then we have our Alesk, just 1. You can juggle it, it's fine. The second one comes up rarely, but it comes up every once in a while, but you can get away with 1. Samurai Destroyer, 1 Dragster, Coral. This is strictly for this variant, because you need to be able to make it with token and your Tristaros. Just forcing back row, right? You have the bounce, you have the pop, and then SP Little Knight. This card is insane in this deck because it's either or. It's Adventure or it's Crystron. So good. And then your Clockwork Knight. And then Typhon, Dracosac, because you can make it your Infinity. And this is a bit different because usually this is not played. Usually you play the Bat, Murcielago, but I felt like I wanted spot removal, right? And initially I was trying out Subversion. I'll play a Murcielago and then it would start Subversion, but I wanted to be able to just force interaction, right? So like be able to go into this, send something, send True Light, link it away for an SP, recycle it, right? And then, of course, you have your Omni, your Silva. If you want to see the deck in action, just go ahead and check out the gameplay. There's 5 rounds. It's it's a new style of recording where it's POV, and then I want it to be very immersive. That's pretty cool. Like, you get to see the hand, you know, when I draw. So it was a lot of fun editing it. It's just something I was trying out for weeks now, and they got stuck in the mail, so I wasn't able to try it last week and the week before. So luckily, they were here for this weekend or for this OTS championship. And then I really like how it functioned. Its versatility, its pivot points, its ability to freestyle into a board. It wasn't straightforward. Oh, this is what you do. This is how you have to do it. So you got to try it for yourself. It's really fun, right? That's kind of the whole point of this variant, to just to not get bored and not keep it stale. Be able to use your creativity as you're trying to go second, because going first, by modern standards, your deck should be capable of going first and ending on a board. But going second, that's where the fun is, right? Because you get to really pick a board apart and try to outclever your opponent, and that's a lot of fun. But for the most part, that's going to be it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you haven't, and thanks for watching.